Hello friends, welcome to the channel. I'm Rayo, and today I wanted to talk about something interesting I've noticed in my language learning journey. So I, like a lot of people in the United States, had Spanish in middle school and high school. You get that kind of basic Spanish, that "Oh, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, y tú? Me llamo Rayo," all that kind of fun stuff, right? And it's all that basics that you just like have over and over and over again in your brain, but you never really, at least in my experience, and I know in a few people's experiences, like my friends and such, you never really go beyond that. But I decided, I think it might have been a New Year's resolution or just kind of something that ended up happening. But I decided I really wanted to dive into Spanish and really try and get more going, get my brain around it, get some more practice in. One of my positions I worked in a recreation center, and it was in a area that had a lot of Mexican Spanish folks around that would come into the facility. So I was able to actually practice Spanish in a more hands-on way and use Spanish within the position a little bit. I had that little bit of basic behind me, so I was able to kind of get the signatures I needed on the forms and everything by asking people, it's like, okay, put your name here, put your phone number here, how many months do you want for a membership, those really basic pieces. But I was able to develop my skill set a little bit more in Spanish because I was applicably using it. So I decided, I was like, okay, let me actually dive into Spanish more, and I started use Duolingo for my language kind of learning process, and I'm at like a 150-day streak, which is really awesome, actually. But somewhere in the process of that, in like December or so, I got really into K-pop, and I'd already kind of been learning Japanese on Duolingo as well, but I was like, okay, hey, let me dive into Korean. And something really interesting I noticed when I started learning Korean in addition to Spanish is that by learning Korean, it actually made learning Spanish easier, especially the pronunciation, which I thought was really interesting. So Spanish has a Latin base to it, right? And a lot of overlap with certain words in English. So the alphabet in Spanish and English is very similar, just like a couple additional consonants, specifically in Spanish versus in English, but the pronunciation is very similar, and it's really much easier for me to look at a word and pronounce it properly in Spanish than it had been before. Purely, actually, I think because of the fact I'm also learning Korean in addition to Spanish. Korean is alphabet's very different. There's consonants and vowels, of course, but the pronunciation is a little different. It's very vowel heavy in my experience, so it's really difficult. At first it was anyway, it's gotten a lot easier, but it was really difficult to like wrap my mouth and like tongue around the word specifically to like pronounce something properly. And with that, and finally at like some point it kind of like clicked in my brain where I was like, okay, it was easier to pronounce Korean. Finally I was able to kind of wrap my mouth and speak the language, but then that also second-handedly made Spanish much easier to pronounce all of a sudden, because my brain was like, okay, this is the difficult thing. Korean over here is difficult to pronounce, so now Spanish over here is easy by comparison, and we can just go at it and not have to like think about it too much, which I thought was a really interesting aspect of learning. So with Korean, the alphabet's actually super easy to pick up, which was awesome to learn and like be able to like read things really fast. And by comparison, it was just like, okay, hey, now it's like, okay, I do Korean specifically on Rosetta Stone right now. I have access through my library card, which is really awesome, actually. Really cool to have. So it's like, okay, I can focus on Korean on my computer. I spend probably about an hour a day on Korean, and then I still do Spanish on Duolingo. It's easier to know that the Spanish is correct, or that it's being presented to me in a correct manner on Spanish, because in Duolingo with Spanish, because I have more of a background in Spanish and learning Spanish. Versus Korean, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure. It's like sometimes wrapping your brain around how things are pronounced, or if it's like, okay, how is it being presented forward to you? So it's like, okay, between Rosetta Stone and Duolingo for seeing Korean, I'm like, okay, I should be at least getting like the actual like how people would actually pronounce things, how people would actually say things, the grammar behind everything. So it's just been an interesting experience so far with language. I don't really do Japanese right now at the moment, but even Japanese is a little bit easier to go back to and pronounce versus Korean, just based purely on how the languages all function. So there's a lot more consonants in Japanese, for example, but the alphabet and the kanji are much, much more difficult to pick up than Korean. You got, what, three, I think it's three different alphabets in Japanese versus just the one, and a really easy one in Korean. And then of course I have the language alphabet I'm used to with Spanish / English, because there's pretty much majority overlap in those languages. So just been an interesting process so far, and something I kind of wanted to share. I don't know if this has been the case for other language learners. I'm by no means trying to be a polyglot in any capacity, but I like language because of the challenge it presents. It's something I've always liked and enjoyed learning. So now that I've kind of finished my university college experience, have quite a few degrees and was in school for about probably like 10 years or so, but I've kind of finished that part of my life now. But I still really enjoy learning things and learning cultures and other things in life, and different kinds of like dances and movement, and language came up as just another way to keep challenging myself, keep learning, keep growing. And I think it's really good for your brain to learn a language, to just think of things in a different way, in a different manner. There's different words and different feelings that are not conveyed in every language. So it's this feeling over here, it does not translate the same way as it does in your native language, potentially. And as you get really, really fluent in a language, then you can expand your awareness, I think, and expand your capacity to even think and process things, because you have multiple ways to do that, multiple languages, multiple lenses of different cultures to look through and to perceive things. So but mostly I just wanted to kind of share that. I think by learning Korean, working on my Korean, it has made learning Spanish easier, and definitely the pronunciation's a lot easier at this point too. So I'm kind of excited to see how it keeps moving forward. I don't study Spanish as heavily as I do Korean right now, but I do probably about at least 20 minutes a day on Spanish as well, in addition to about the hour of Korean I do every day. So lots of language in my head, and of course trying to consume media in those different languages as well, music especially. Sometimes dramas and different TV shows, you can get a lot of experience with language in those aspects. But if anybody else has a similar experience, please let me know in the comments down below. Be super curious to hear about that. What languages are you learning? What has been your experience learning languages of different parts of the world, right? So we got those kind of like that Latin-based language I have over here with English and Spanish, mostly the Spanish, because the English has lots of other aspects to it. And then you have the Asian-based language on the other side, coming from two really completely different parts of the world, and therefore having a completely different way of expressing an alphabet and pronunciation. So let me know if you have anything kind of similar to that, if you have two really opposite kind of different languages you're learning, and how that learning process affects the other, if you feel so called to do. But yeah, please leave in the comments down below. Please leave a like, follow me if you want some more content. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to be posting too much on this channel. It's just kind of a feel it out, my life kind of channel. So if you want to, you can go check out my tarot channel. That will be linked in the channel section in this on this YouTube page. And that's all I have for you today, friends. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.